I was preparing dinner for her family when I heard her brother say she needed to divorce me before children trapped her forever. What she said next. At 41, I thought I understood betrayal. 23 years of building an empire from nothing, supporting my wife through Harvard Law, creating what I believed was an unshakable foundation. Then I overheard three sentences that shattered everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the woman sleeping beside me every night. While preparing an elaborate dinner for my wife's entire family, I stepped into the wine cellar for additional vintage bottles and heard her brother say, "I still can't believe you married this nobody. Dad's absolutely right. You need to divorce him before children trap you forever." She replied with chilling certainty, already implementing the plan. "My attorney says we can claim 60% of his portfolio too." I returned with the Dom Perignon and continued hosting with a flawless smile, my world quietly disintegrating behind polished composure. 4 days later, my encrypted phone buzzed with 73 increasingly frantic messages, each one more desperate than the last. Something felt profoundly wrong about Catherine the week preceding her family's spring gathering. Not the familiar tension when merger deadlines pressed or when I'd forgotten to move my Armani suits from our bedroom chair. This carried a different weight entirely. She maintained constant vigilance over her iPhone when she assumed I wasn't observing, switched browser windows whenever I walked past her MacBook Pro, and began conducting hushed conversations in our study after 9 years of marriage. When you've shared nearly a decade with someone, you develop an almost supernatural intuition for these shifts, like recognizing when architectural blueprints contain fatal structural flaws just by examining the foundation specifications. Look, I never imagined I'd be documenting one of these confessional narratives. I'm not predisposed to broadcasting private devastation across digital platforms, but I'm sitting here at 4 in the morning with Agent McCallan, still processing how my carefully constructed existence imploded within 96 hours. I need to process this somewhere, and you anonymous observers are receiving front row access to this masterclass in sophisticated destruction. Essential background. I'm Christopher, 41. I built my investment management firm from absolute zero after graduating summa cum laude from Wharton. Started with just my MBA thesis research and a borrowed Audi. Now I oversee 8 portfolio managers handling projects across 3 major metropolitan markets. Nothing approaching Blackstone scale, but it generates substantial returns and considerable respect throughout financial circles. Catherine, 38, represents my wife of 9 years. I financed her entire Harvard education, covered her Back Bay apartment lease, everything while establishing my practice. She originates from established Connecticut wealth. Her father Reginald manages a prestigious hedge fund. Her mother Vivian operates an exclusive real estate consultancy specializing in historic properties, and her brother Harrison believes his Ivy League credentials grant him intellectual superiority over anyone in wealth management. Here's the fundamental truth I'd always recognized: they considered her capable of superior matrimonial choices. The subtle commentary about my boutique operation or questioning when I'd pursue additional advanced degrees never ceased, but Catherine consistently defended my achievements, or so I believed with absolute conviction. Last Saturday marked our annual spring soiree at our Beacon Hill residence, a tradition Catherine insisted upon to showcase our home's Georgian elegance to her distinguished family. I spent the morning coordinating with our catering staff, supervising the sommelier's wine pairings, and consulting with our executive chef about the evening's 7-course tasting menu. Everything demanded absolute perfection for her bloodline. I'd been coordinating since dawn, ensuring our household staff prepared the dining room with our Baccarat crystal and Hermes table settings. I'd been dry aging prime Wagyu beef for 2 weeks in our temperature-controlled wine cellar. Catherine exhibited unusual tension, criticizing minor details, but I attributed this to her typical pre-gathering anxiety. Everyone arrived promptly at 6:30, her parents in their Bentley Continental, her brother Harrison with his wife in their Tesla Model S, her younger sister Penelope, who's completing her doctorate at MIT. Catherine's mother immediately began evaluating our recent interior design modifications, while her father posed calculated inquiries about market performance, with that particular intonation suggesting he anticipated admissions of professional inadequacy. By 8:15 we'd transitioned to dinner. I'd arranged our formal dining table with our wedding spode china, the pieces we'd received as gifts from Catherine's grandmother and rarely utilized, but realized we required 2 additional chairs from our storage area. As I headed toward our cellar through the service entrance, I detected voices emanating from our private garden terrace. Harrison and Catherine stood beside our Japanese maple, sharing cigarettes, which struck me as peculiar since she'd supposedly eliminated tobacco 3 years prior following her annual executive physical. I was preparing to acknowledge them when I heard my name mentioned. I froze completely. Harrison was expressing disbelief that she'd married this nobody and that their father was absolutely correct. She needed to divorce me before having children and becoming permanently trapped. What Catherine articulated next felt like absorbing a devastating blow to my solar plexus. She was already implementing the plan, and her attorney confirmed they could claim 60% of my portfolio too. I remained motionless, completely numb, as they laughed about my complete ignorance regarding what was approaching. They continued discussing someone named Sebastian being a substantially better match for her, and how she'd wasted her prime years with me while I was playing financial advisor. Have you ever experienced a moment where your entire reality undergoes seismic recalibration? 9 years of marriage, countless nights, I remained awake helping her prepare for bar examinations. The European vacations we postponed so she could afford Harvard's tuition. The additional consulting contracts I accepted to cover her student loan payments. All of it suddenly appeared different under the harsh illumination of what I'd just discovered. But I didn't react emotionally, didn't confront them immediately. Something inside me transformed into ice-cold calculation. I quietly retreated, retrieved 2 Chippendale chairs from storage, controlled my breathing for 60 seconds, and manufactured the most convincing smile of my professional career. Walking back inside, I caught my reflection in our antique hallway mirror. I appeared perfectly composed externally, while internally experiencing complete nuclear devastation. The remainder of that dinner felt surreal beyond description. I poured vintage Bordeaux, carved the Wagyu with surgical precision, laughed at her father's insufferable anecdotes, and observed my wife, this stranger across our mahogany table, performing as though nothing had fundamentally shifted. I studied her features, searching for the woman I'd married. Had she always regarded me with that barely concealed disdain, or was I finally perceiving reality clearly? When her mother complimented our chef's preparation and requested the dry aging technique details, I nearly lost composure entirely. 9 years of family gatherings, and suddenly, she decides I might possess knowledge worth acquiring. I explained the process with mechanical precision while my consciousness screamed internally. At one point her sister Penelope gave me this peculiar expression, like she was attempting to decode something unspoken. She's consistently been the most authentic member of that family dynasty. I wondered whether she possessed knowledge about the situation. Following dessert, Harrison proposed a toast of family and upcoming transformations, looking directly at Catherine with this smugly satisfied expression. I raised my crystal and drank, contemplating how satisfying it would be to shatter that Baccarat stem across his aristocratic jawline. When they finally departed around midnight, Catherine began clearing our table, humming contentedly to herself. Humming as though she hadn't just systematically destroyed our entire shared existence. I told her I'd handle the remaining cleanup and she should rest. She kissed my cheek and said I was such a wonderful husband. The audacity nearly induced physical illness. After she retired to our master suite, I accessed her MacBook. Password protected, unusual for her, but I knew she employed similar patterns for most accounts. Third attempt granted access. The correspondence with her attorney had commenced 3 months prior. The strategy involved filing after she secured partnership at her prestigious firm, utilizing my income to enhance her professional standing, then divorcing me once she'd achieved that security. There were detailed spreadsheets documenting my business assets, our investment accounts, even a comprehensive timeline for the divorce proceedings. And there it was, transfer documentation showing she'd been systematically moving smaller amounts to a separate account for months, just below thresholds that would trigger automatic notifications. Brilliant attorney, brilliant strategy. I examined our joint investment portfolio. 47,000 missing. The capital I'd been accumulating for business expansion, our shared future. Then I discovered text messages with someone listed as S. Apparently Sebastian wasn't merely a better fit. He was already test driving my replacement. The conversations extended back 8 months. 8 fucking months. I didn't sleep that night or the following evening. I contacted my office on Monday, first absence in 4 years, and consulted with a divorce attorney while Catherine attended depositions. Distinguished gentleman named Richard, whom a colleague recommended, presented him with everything, showed him the screenshots I'd captured. Richard explained the situation with brutal honesty. In our state, she could potentially claim 60% of my firm's valuation since it had grown substantially during our marriage, despite her never contributing one meaningful hour to its development. Despite my building it from nothing while financing her legal education. When he quoted the potential settlement figures, I nearly lost consciousness. Everything I'd constructed, everything I'd sacrificed for, divided and transferred to the woman who was orchestrating my financial assassination. I remember asking Richard, "So I simply accept this systematic destruction?" He began discussing amicable settlements and damage minimization, but I was already mentally elsewhere. Something fundamental had crystallized inside me that evening. Catherine inquired whether I was feeling improved, brought home soup from our favorite bistro, performed concern flawlessly. I played along, claimed fatigue, probably developing something minor. She suggested scheduling an appointment with our concierge physician. The performance deserved recognition. I nodded, expressed gratitude for her caring, told her I loved her. She reciprocated without hesitation, those three meaningless words falling from her lips while she planned my financial execution. I watched her scroll through Instagram as we sat on our Italian leather sofa, pausing to like a photograph of us from last Christmas that her sister had posted. The caption read #relationship goals. I nearly laughed audibly. It was like cohabitating with a stranger wearing my wife's face. Every gesture, every word felt calculated and rehearsed. Had she always been this person? Had I been blind for 9 years, or had she transformed? Does the distinction even matter? Here's the essential truth. I've never considered myself a vindictive man. When competitors attempt to undercut my clients, I usually sever ties and proceed forward. When clients delay payments, I work collaboratively with them. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was my existence. As I lay awake that second night, watching her sleep peacefully beside me, probably dreaming about spending my assets with Sebastian, something hardened inside me a clarity I'd never experienced before. You see, Catherine and her family consistently underestimated my capabilities. They observed the Wharton MBA and boutique practice and assumed I was intellectually limited. They never comprehended that building something from nothing requires intelligence, strategy, infinite patience. I began making calls the following morning, first to my private banker, then to my business partner, then to several key institutional clients. By noon, I had a comprehensive plan forming. By dinner, I knew exactly what I was going to execute. Catherine wants war? Excellent, but she's bringing a butter knife to a chainsaw fight. This isn't about money anymore. It's about demonstrating to her and her entire bloodline exactly who they decided to systematically destroy. The nobody they looked down upon for 9 years is about to provide them with a masterclass in consequences. So here I am, 4 days after that dinner, finalizing my blueprint for complete demolition. And just like any sophisticated financial strategy, you need to establish the foundation before you construct. Tomorrow, everything changes. Catherine thinks she's orchestrated everything perfectly, but she has no comprehension what's approaching. Neither does her family or Sebastian, whoever the fuck he is. I supported her ambitions for 9 years. Now I get to watch hers crumble in real time. First, appreciation for all the support on my previous post. Never anticipated that kind of response. For those questioning whether I've calmed down or if I'm thinking more rationally now, absolutely not. Still furious, still moving forward, just more strategically now. Look, when you build something with intellectual precision, you learn that rushing creates problems you'll have to resolve later. Revenge operates on the same principle. It requires a proper foundation. The morning after I posted, Catherine departed for her law firm like any typical day. Kissed me goodbye, reminded me to contact our house manager about that malfunctioning fixtures in the guest suite, asked if I could collect her items from the dry cleaner. The absolute normality of it was surreal, like watching someone sleepwalk through a minefield they'd constructed themselves. As soon as her Porsche disappeared from our driveway, I initiated operations. First priority was securing my actual business. Called my accountant for an emergency meeting at the private club downtown from my office. Absolutely no way I was conducting this over the phone or at my workplace where staff might overhear. Here's the thing, when you're building a business while supporting someone through graduate school, you make compromises. Sometimes you don't document everything with perfect precision. Sometimes you cut corners on paperwork because you're exhausted from working 16-hour days. Catherine knew this, had even assisted with some of our early tax documentation when we couldn't afford a proper accounting firm. The club meeting was eye-opening. My accountant, let's call him Marcus, looked like he hadn't slept in days. Turns out Catherine had already contacted him, asking seemingly innocent questions about business valuation methodologies and ownership documentation. Claimed she was helping me prepare for a potential institutional investor presentation. Marcus, not knowing what was really happening, had provided her some surface-level information but felt uncomfortable enough to flag it. When I explained what was really occurring, the color drained from his face completely. "Marcus, I need to show you something," he said, opening his tablet. He displayed a series of documents showing my business transactions from the past 4 years. These highlighted ones, they don't quite reconcile properly. Turns out Catherine had been doing more than just planning a divorce. She'd been creating a paper trail to make it appear like I was mishandling business funds. Small discrepancies in dates, amounts transferred between accounts at unusual times, invoices with inconsistent numbering. Nothing illegal. She was too sophisticated for that, but enough to make things look questionable in divorce court. Enough to justify bringing in a forensic accountant who would cost me tens of thousands and find absolutely nothing wrong, but would drag out proceedings for months. Marcus and I spent 4 hours documenting everything properly, creating clear trails showing all transactions were legitimate. We accelerated payments to vendors, settled equipment financing early, and documented Catherine's complete non-involvement in business operations. While we worked, I received a text from Penelope, Catherine's sister. This was unusual. We've always been cordial, but rarely communicate directly. She asked if we could meet for coffee sometime soon, said she needed to discuss something important. I agreed to Saturday morning, wondering what that concerned. Next stop, the bank. I'd been contemplating something Harrison had mentioned at that dinner, a comment about their parents helping her when the time comes. I had an intuition, and intuitions in finance often save your portfolio. At the bank, I spoke with our private banking advisor, confirmed what I suspected. Catherine had applied for a substantial credit line against our home 2 weeks prior. The home that's primarily in my name because I made the down payment with pre-marriage assets. The home that I'd renovated myself, adding nearly $200,000 in value. I was still listed as a required signatory, but the paperwork was progressing through the system. 1 more week, and she would have had access to approximately $400,000 in cash that I would be partially responsible for repaying. The advisor seemed uncomfortable when I explained I didn't authorize this. After showing identification and marriage documentation, I was able to cancel the application. Then I transferred half of our joint investment portfolio into my personal account, exactly the amount I had contributed over the years. Is that petty? Perhaps, but it's significantly less than she was planning to take. When I returned home, I did something I'm not proud of, but desperate times require desperate measures. I installed discrete recording devices in our living room and master suite. Completely legal in our state since it's my residence too, but definitely crosses an ethical boundary. I also set up a camera in our home office angled toward her desk. Then I took our golden retriever for a walk around Beacon Hill like nothing was wrong. Waved to the neighbors, threw a tennis ball for the Morrisons' children, picked up after the dog with monogrammed waste bags while casually planning the complete dismantling of my marriage. Normal Tuesday activities. That night over dinner, Catherine seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. When I asked about her day, she gave vague responses. Then her phone buzzed again, and I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. "Who's Sebastian?" I asked, keeping my voice casual while reaching for more risotto. The fork paused halfway to her mouth, just for a second. "Oh, new client at the firm. Time-sensitive merger case." Then she placed her phone face down on our dining table. That slight hesitation told me everything. "Must be important if he's texting during dinner," I said, still Mr. Relaxed Husband. She gave me this tight smile. "You know how it is. Some people don't respect professional boundaries." The irony almost made me choke on our truffle garnish. After dinner, she said she needed to finish some work and disappeared into the home office. I cleaned our kitchen, making enough noise so she'd think I was occupied, then silently moved to the hallway near the office door, which she'd left slightly ajar. I could hear her voice, low and intimate, not her client voice. Not her talking to family voice, her bedroom voice. Can't just call whenever you want. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Just be patient. Yes, I miss you too. Each word was another nail in the coffin of whatever feelings I still harbored for her. The rage I'd been suppressing threatened to boil over completely. I wanted to burst through that door, to confront her, to end this charade immediately. But that would have ruined everything. So I walked away, back to the kitchen, turned on the disposal, pretended to clean more dishes while planning my next moves. Here's the thing about building with precision. Timing matters. Pour concrete too soon after rain. It won't set properly. Rush the structural work. The whole building is compromised. This revenge needed time to cure properly. Wednesday morning, I accidentally left divorce papers I'd printed out visible on my nightstand. Not completed, just the standard forms from the county website. When I returned from my shower, they were slightly moved. She'd examined them, but she said nothing. Neither did I. At the office, I quietly began preparation, called in favors from clients who owed me. Not for money, for information. Turns out Sebastian wasn't just some random guy. He was a close friend of Harrison, Catherine's brother. They'd attended Harvard together. He came from the same kind of established wealth as her family, the kind of man her parents had always envisioned for her. And here's where it gets interesting. Sebastian had been at several family events I'd missed over the years because I was working. Birthday celebrations, a ski trip to Aspen, even a Mediterranean cruise I couldn't join because I was closing a major acquisition, the deal that actually established my firm's reputation. Through a mutual contact, I learned Sebastian and Catherine had dated briefly in graduate school before we met. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. This wasn't just an affair. This was a long-term strategy. While investigating all this, I also created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every penny I'd spent supporting Catherine through law school. Tuition, books, rent, the MacBook Pro I bought her for graduation, the bar exam prep course, the interview suits, the countless Ubers home from late-night study sessions because I didn't want her on public transit after dark. Grand total, $78,600, not including interest I could have earned if I had invested that money in my business instead. That night, Catherine initiated intimacy for the first time in months. I almost laughed at the timing. Was this part of her strategy too? Keep me distracted and satisfied while she arranged my financial execution. I went along with it, performing as expected, feeling nothing but complete detachment as she performed passion. Afterward, while she slept, I sat in darkness staring at our ceiling fan, counting rotations instead of sheep. One thought kept circling. How long had our marriage been performance? Was it always transactional for her? Was I just a stepping stone? Thursday morning brought my coffee meeting with Penelope. I arrived early, checking Reddit on my phone while I waited. The support from you anonymous strangers was still flowing in. Some suggested extreme measures I'd never consider. Others shared similar stories that made mine seem modest by comparison. The solidarity helped somehow. Penelope arrived looking nervous. She's always been the authentic one in that family, more genuine, less concerned with social positioning. She ordered some complicated espresso drink and picked at a croissant while making small talk. Finally, she took a deep breath. What she told me next confirmed everything. She'd known about Catherine and Sebastian for months, had discovered them together at their parents' Nantucket estate during that family weekend I'd missed because of a client emergency. She'd confronted Catherine, who swore it was a one-time mistake, but it wasn't. Catherine had confided in Penelope recently, after too much wine following a family dinner I'd also missed. Told her the whole plan. Stay with me until making partner, then transition to Sebastian with half my assets as her security. Penelope was telling me this because she couldn't stomach it anymore. Said she'd always respected me, thought I was good for her sister, couldn't understand why her family never gave me proper consideration. I thanked her for her honesty, careful not to reveal I already knew most of this. Asked her to keep our conversation confidential. She agreed, seeming relieved to unburden herself. As she left, she hugged me and whispered that she was sorry. It was the first genuine human connection I'd felt in days. Thursday night, I set the next phase in motion. Created a fabricated business crisis, called Catherine saying I needed all hands on deck for an emergency meeting the following night. Major institutional client threatening to withdraw, potential financial disaster. Needed her support, and her family's counsel. She hesitated, said she had plans. I pushed harder, let my voice crack a little, said I was terrified of losing everything we'd built together. Played on her guilt perfectly. She relented, agreed to host an emergency family dinner Friday night. Said she'd call her parents and Harrison. Perfect. Friday morning, I put the final touches on my preparations. Set up the dining room with printouts hidden in a folder by my seat. Loaded all the evidence onto a tablet. Screenshots, recordings, financial records, everything. Picked up her favorite dessert from that French patisserie in Back Bay she loves so much. At the office, I made sure everything was in order. Had a frank conversation with my business partner, who was understandably shocked but fully supportive. We'd been friends since Wharton. He knew what Catherine's education had cost me in more ways than one. When I got home, Catherine was already there, setting our table with Baccarat crystal again. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Another family dinner, same stage, entirely different play about to unfold. She seemed jittery, checking her phone constantly. When I asked if everyone was confirmed for dinner, she nodded distractedly, said her parents were bringing wine, Harrison and his wife would be there too. I suggested inviting Penelope as well. Catherine looked surprised but agreed, texting her sister while I watched. The gang would all be there. Perfect. As I headed upstairs to shower and change, Catherine called after me, asking what the client issue was specifically, so she could prepare her thoughts. I told her I'd explain everything during dinner. Wanted to go through it just once with everyone present. Under the shower spray, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present the evidence, the order of revelations for maximum impact. It felt surreal, like planning a presentation for the most crucial client meeting ever. I got dressed in the clothes Catherine had always said made me look most professional. Dark wool trousers, white dress shirt, Italian leather shoes instead of casual loafers. The costume for my final performance as her devoted husband. Downstairs, I could hear her on the phone in hushed tones. Thanks to the recorder in the living room, I'd be able to review that conversation later if needed, but I already knew who she was talking to, already knew what she was saying. Let her have this last moment of thinking she's in control. Let her reassure Sebastian that everything's going according to plan. Let her believe for these final hours that she's the smartest person in the room. The doorbell chimed. Catherine jumped, quickly ending her call. Her parents arrived first, her father bringing an expensive bottle of wine as promised. He shook my hand with that same condescending grip, already asking about this business emergency with barely concealed satisfaction in his voice. Harrison and his wife arrived next, followed shortly by Penelope, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. The gang was all here, all the players in position. As we moved to the dining room, Catherine put her hand on my arm, asking if I was okay. The concern in her voice sounded so genuine that for a split second, I almost doubted everything. Almost wondered if I'd constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory out of coincidences and misunderstandings. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. I saw Sebastian's name flash on the screen before she quickly silenced it, and any last shred of doubt evaporated. I took my seat at the head of our mahogany table, the folder of evidence beside my plate. Catherine sat to my right, her father to my left. The symmetry was perfect, just like the dinner where I discovered her betrayal, but now I was the one with secrets. As Catherine's mother asked about wine preferences, I caught Penelope watching me with a strange expression, part curiosity, part dread. She knew something was coming, just not what. I stood up, wine glass in hand, and everyone fell silent, expecting me to explain the business emergency. I smiled at each of them in turn, saving Catherine for last. Before we get to the reason I called this meeting, I said, raising my glass, I'd like to propose a toast. To family, to loyalty, and to finally seeing things clearly. The confusion on their faces was just the beginning. They had no idea what was coming next, and neither did Catherine. I sat down calmly and took a sip of Reginald's expensive wine. So about this business emergency I mentioned. Catherine squeezed my hand encouragingly, the absolute performance of it. I almost had to admire her commitment. Well, I continued, pulling out my tablet. I've discovered some serious problems that threaten everything I've built. Problems developing right under my nose. Reginald leaned forward with barely contained smugness. Financial issues? Cash flow problems? I've always said your boutique model seemed precarious. Actually, I said, connecting my tablet to our wall-mounted television, the problem isn't with my business. It's with my marriage. The room went silent. Catherine's hand froze on mine. Christopher, she whispered, what are you doing? Here's the thing. When you're demolishing a structure, you don't start with the roof. You undermine the foundation first. So I played the recording of Catherine and Harrison from the previous dinner, their voices filling our elegant dining room. Harrison saying she needed to divorce me before having children and getting stuck forever. Catherine replying she was already implementing the plan and her attorney said they could claim 60% of my portfolio too. I watched each face around the table. Harrison went pale. Catherine's mother covered her mouth. Reginald's jaw clenched. Penelope closed her eyes like she was watching a car crash she'd known was coming. And Catherine just sat there, paralyzed, as her carefully constructed plan imploded. Next, I showed screenshots of her texts with Sebastian, carefully edited but still damning. 8 months, I said quietly. 8 months you've been seeing him while I've been working 70-hour weeks. I turned to her parents. Did you know she was cheating, or just that she was planning to divorce me? Reginald tried to interrupt, but I wasn't finished. I swiped to my spreadsheet. Every penny I'd spent putting Catherine through Harvard Law. $78,600. This is what I invested in our future, I said, while building my business from nothing. Next screen, documentation of her secret account and the canceled credit application. And this is how she planned to thank me. The silence was deafening. Then, three things happened almost simultaneously. Reginald stood up, knocking his chair backward. This is ridiculous, Catherine. We're leaving. Catherine grabbed my arm. Christopher, please, I can explain. And Harrison, the coward, tried deleting messages under the table. I pointed at him. Those messages you're deleting. I already have them all. The times you helped her plan this. Harrison froze, then looked at his wife, who stared at him with dawning horror. Catherine switched tactics. It wasn't like that, she said, tears forming. I was confused, unhappy. We've been growing apart for years. Growing apart. I echoed. While I was paying for your education. While I was building a future for us. I hadn't planned to lose my composure, but something snapped. 9 years, I said, lowering my voice. 9 years I believed in us. And all this time, I was just a stepping stone. Her father stepped in. Whatever problems you two have are between you, but if you think you can intimidate my daughter with this ambush, you're mistaken. We have resources you can't imagine. I laughed. Resources? You mean like the $47,000 she stole from our joint account? Or the credit line she tried to take out against my house? As Reginald ranted about all they'd done for us, I noticed Catherine texting under the table. That's when I dropped the final bomb. Did Catherine tell you Sebastian is married too? I said casually. The room went still. Even Reginald stopped mid-sentence. Yeah, found that out yesterday. His wife's name is Rachel. Very understanding when I showed her the texts between her husband and my wife. Catherine's face drained of color. You what? We had coffee yesterday. Seemed only fair she should know. That's when Reginald lost it. Grabbed the edge of my dining table, the one I'd had custom made, and flipped it. Food, wine, crystal, everything went flying. Catherine screamed. Her mother gasped. Harrison jumped back. I just sat there, oddly calm, watching 9 years of pretending crash around us. Penelope was the only one who moved to help clean up. Our eyes met across the mess, and she gave me a small nod of respect, understanding. Reginald pointed at me, finger shaking. You think you've won? You're nothing. You manage other people's money because you weren't smart enough for real finance. My daughter made a mistake slumming with you, but we'll fix it. I stood up slowly. I may be boutique, Reginald, but at least I built something real. What have you built besides a family of liars? He lunged at me, actually tried to throw a punch. Harrison barely caught him, holding him back while he spewed threats about attorneys. Catherine kept saying, Christopher, please, let's talk privately. This isn't how I wanted. How you wanted to divorce me. To take 60% of everything I built while fucking someone else. I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. I opened the front door. I think you should all leave now. Harrison dragged his father out. Penelope was the last to leave, pausing at the door. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I always thought you deserved better. Then it was just Catherine and me in our destroyed dining room. Where are you going to go? She asked, her voice small. I already have a suite at the Four Seasons, I said. I'll be back for my things tomorrow when you're at the office. You planned all this, she whispered. I learned from the best, I replied, grabbing my pre-packed overnight bag. As I walked out, she called after me. You'll regret this. My father wasn't bluffing about the lawyers. I didn't respond. Some foundations are too damaged to rebuild on. That night at the hotel, I slept better than I had in months. The next day, I went back while Catherine was at her firm. Packed what mattered: clothes, important documents, family photos, my golf clubs. Left my key on the granite counter. I'd already secured a penthouse apartment in the financial district, not hiding, just creating space. Called my staff and explained I'd be working remotely, dealing with personal matters. For 3 days, I stayed off social media, ignored emails, focused on setting up my new space. On the fourth morning, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately started buzzing. 73 WhatsApp messages from Catherine, ranging from furious to pleading. The first ones were all caps rage. How dare you embarrass me like that, and you've ruined everything. Then they shifted. Christopher, please call me. We need to talk, and I know I made a mistake, but we can work through this. By message 60, she was bargaining. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off my family. Just please talk to me. Message 70 was simple. I'm sorry. The final three came at 4:17 in the morning. I told Sebastian everything. About the money. About the divorce plans. He says we should still be together. Then, he just called to break things off. Said he's trying to save his marriage with Rachel. Then, I have nobody now. I read through them without responding, feeling nothing but exhaustion. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just emptiness, like completing a complex transaction and realizing the client will never appreciate the precision. As I scrolled, another message appeared. Christopher, I know you've read these. Please just tell me what you want. Money? The house. I'll sign whatever you want. After everything, she still didn't understand. This was never about money. It was about betrayal, years wasted, trust stolen. I finally responded. I've already sent the divorce papers to your firm. All I want is for this to be over quickly. Her reply came instantly. Can we meet? Please, just one conversation? Before I could respond, my phone rang. Richard, my attorney. Rachel, Sebastian's wife, had reached out to him after I'd shown her the evidence. She'd done her own investigation and discovered Sebastian had pulled similar schemes with other women. She wanted to coordinate for our divorce proceedings. As Richard talked, I looked around my sparse apartment. A mattress on the floor, boxes unpacked, my golden retriever watching me with patient eyes. This wasn't how I'd imagined my life at 41, starting over again, but sometimes you have to tear everything down to fix a compromised foundation. I agreed to meet Rachel for coffee, not romantically, but because there's solidarity in shared betrayal. After hanging up, I sent Catherine one final message. There's nothing to talk about. The marriage is over. Please direct all future communication through our attorneys. Then I blocked her number. That afternoon, I took the dog hiking through the Blue Hills. My phone buzzed with a text from Penelope. Heard you moved out. Catherine is staying with our parents. Dad's on the warpath, but Mom's finally asking questions about what really happened. Think his perfect daughter facade is cracking. I replied, thanks for letting me know. Hope you're okay in all this. Her response, I am, better than okay actually. Finally told them I'm dropping out of the program they chose for me to pursue what I actually want. Guess your courage was contagious. As the sun set, I watched my dog explore, tail wagging without care. 9 years gone, countless hours invested, a future planned and destroyed, but also freedom, truth, a chance to rebuild something authentic. My phone buzzed. Rachel confirming our coffee meeting, with a link to a support group for people dealing with divorces involving financial deception. Apparently, it's more common than I realized. I pocketed my phone and called the dog. Time to head back, make dinner, maybe unpack a few boxes. Small steps, one day at a time, like any good investment strategy. The foundation comes first, and this time, I'm making damn sure it's solid. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. My firm has grown by 40% since the divorce. Turns out, when you're not financing someone else's betrayal, you have a lot more capital to reinvest in success. Catherine's partnership fell through. Word travels fast in Boston legal circles, and her reputation took a hit when the details of our divorce became public record. Sebastian never left his wife, Rachel, who took him for everything in their own spectacular divorce proceeding. Penelope stopped by yesterday with news that Catherine moved back in with her parents. Apparently, she's been trying to rebuild her career, but finding it difficult when your professional network knows you systemically plan to destroy your husband's livelihood while carrying on an affair. Do I feel vindicated? Not exactly. Mostly, I feel free. Free from the constant performance, the walking on eggshells, the wondering if the person next to me actually cares about me or just sees me as a financial vehicle. Rachel and I have been seeing each other occasionally, nothing serious, just two people who understand what it's like to have your reality completely reconstructed overnight. She's remarkable, actually built her own marketing consultancy from nothing while Sebastian was playing golf with trust fund money. The support group has been unexpectedly helpful too. Turns out there are a lot of successful people who've been systematically manipulated by partners who saw dollar signs instead of human beings. We meet monthly, share strategies, sometimes just sit in comfortable silence with people who understand. My business partner asked me recently if I regret how I handled everything. Whether I should have tried counseling, given Catherine a chance to explain, approached it more diplomatically. I told him this: when you discover termites in a building's foundation, you don't negotiate with them. You eliminate the infestation and rebuild stronger. Some people might call what I did cruel, vindictive, even manipulative. But here's what 9 years of marriage taught me about manipulation. The cruelest thing you can do to someone is make them believe in a future you're actively planning to destroy. Catherine spent months systematically planning my financial and emotional devastation while I worked 70-hour weeks to build our life together. She enlisted her family, coordinated with her lover, moved money, consulted attorneys, all while kissing me goodnight and telling me she loved me. So yes, I planned too. I gathered evidence, I strategized, I chose the moment for maximum impact. The difference is, I was defending myself against someone who was actively trying to destroy me. She was the architect of her own humiliation. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Not because I enjoyed it, because I didn't. Watching someone you loved reveal themselves as a stranger is one of the most profound griefs you can experience. But because sometimes, when someone shows you who they really are, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is believe them. The final update came last week. Catherine reached out through a mutual acquaintance, asking if we could meet for closure. I declined. Some chapters don't need epilogues, they just need to end. I've learned that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you create for yourself by choosing to stop letting their story define your future. These days, I wake up in my Harborview apartment, take the dog for runs along the Charles River, work with clients who respect what I've built, and go to sleep knowing that everyone in my life actually wants to be there. It took 41 years and a spectacular betrayal to learn this, but here's the truth they don't teach you in business school. The most valuable investment you can make isn't in stocks or bonds or real estate. It's in surrounding yourself with people who see your success as something to celebrate, not something to steal. Catherine taught me that trust, once broken, can't be repaired, only replaced. So I replaced her, replaced the family that never respected me, replaced the entire life that was built on performance and pretense. And for the first time in years, I'm not performing for anyone. I'm just living, building, moving forward with people who understand that real wealth isn't just what you have in your accounts. It's who you can count on when those accounts don't matter. The foundation is solid now. Everything built on top of it will be real.